Welcome to the Press One for Nick podcast. My name is Nick Limsdahl. My guest this week is Jim Donald. He is the co-chairman of the board of directors and former president and CEO of the Albertson Company, a leading North America retail food, health, and wellness company with over 2,200 supermarkets across 34 states. With a career spanning 48 years in the retail industry, Jim has a proven track record of cultivating employee engagement and improving the performance of both public and private corporations. He began his retail journey as a trainee with Public Supermarkets and since has been recognized as the top 25 CEO in the world by the Best Practice Institute and one of the Business and Travel News 25 most influential business travel executives for his leadership at the extended stay. Get ready for a fascinating conversation with the industry veteran, Jim. Welcome to the Press One for Nick podcast.
Thanks, Nick. Great to see you. You look great as usual.
So one question I ask every single guest at the very beginning is, what's one thing people might not know about you?
I don't know. It's a hard question to answer. I mean, I find that leadership is best done in quiet corners of organizations or stores or warehouses, and that when you're leading a group of people, it starts with just one, and that word spreads, and before you know it, you've got a whole team of people doing things that they never thought they could do before, which is what leadership's all about. So maybe that's what they don't know, is just how one person leads.
So I appreciate that. One other thing that I think people might not know about you who don't know who you are is that you ask really good questions and that you are a really good listener, and then you take all of that information and bring it back into future conversations. And that is a talent that few people have. And I appreciate that as just getting to know you here recently.
Well, to that point, and that goes back to what I said, that I subscribe to, leadership is basically one-on-one. You don't lead large groups of people. You lead one at a time, and before you know it, you have a larger group of people again doing things they never thought they could do.
Well said. So one thing that I want to start off, and I'm going to do this a little bit different than I've done things in the past, but what you do is something called JD Live. And before I break that down, I want you to talk maybe a little bit about what you do at JD Live, what that consists of, and why that's important to you.
Well, JD Live is just a moniker, if you will, of how I led the companies that I had the fortunate opportunity to be in charge of. And it started way back in the 90s, where I would put on a voicemail. I know that's old school, but a voicemail blast, 45 seconds, Monday through Friday, JD coming to you live. It had to be 45 seconds, Nick, because people don't retain things if it goes on and on and on. So this whole voicemails to every employee in the company. It was at Pathmark Supermarkets. There's only one store now, but we were a $5 billion company. It would be like, hey, JD coming to you live Monday morning. My message today is boom. Now I only had like 35 seconds to give that. Well, that morphed into when I went back to Albertsons, and I had 275,000 employees. And so in order for me to reach out after I hit the road, I started doing videos that went on the company portal, about 3 a week. And it was JD come to you live from maybe driving a truck across West Texas, or JD Live come to you from the deli frying chicken in Bakersfield, California, or JD come to you live from Connecticut, where we had 5 meat cutters surrounding me and we're sharpening knives, getting ready to cut meat. But what that did was these 45-second blasts gave people an idea. They could hear my voice on voicemail. They could see me on video, that here's the boss doing the things that he's asking us to do. It has to be okay. But the JD Live became important because they knew they could catch it on a break, on a 15-minute break. They could turn the portal on, and there it is, 45 seconds, and it's gone. And that's it kind of stays with them when you do these things. But every one of these messages, Nick, was a story. And people don't retain numbers. They don't retain facts. They retain stories. It's just how the brain is developed. And so these little stories that I would send out many times a week started to resonate, and people started to listen to them. When I retired from the CEO role at Albertsons, I went back into a store 2 years later. And I said to the store manager, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "Jim?" He says, "Where the heck are the videos? We miss them." I said, "Dude, I've been gone for 2 years now. I'm on the board. I'm not the CEO anymore." But he remembered them, and he remembered what they were all about.
I think it's so important too, because you're at the front line. You're not the CEO at the very top, kind of making those high level decisions, and the people on the front line are not feeling heard or valued. And so taking those 45-second chunks, and if it's showing that you're with the people that are about to cut meat, or if it's in a big truck down the middle of the interstate, it's you speaking from your heart, and you're telling the people on the front line that I'm going to do everything that I can do at the front line to impact the bottom line.
Look, you just said a mouthful, Nick. And one of your former guests, Howard Beer, taught me to flip the organizational structure, the pyramid where the CEO's at the top and the bottom is the front line. He taught me how to flip it so the front line's closest. But what you just said is speaking to the heart. I say to college students, I say to people that I have the opportunity to work with, in order to be successful in life, you have to be bilingual. And I don't mean speak Spanish plus English or French plus English. What I mean is you got to speak two languages. One goes to the head, and that's usually a missive that's sent down, top down. You got to do this, you got to do that. Goes to the head. The second language is speaking to the heart, because once you speak to the heart of anybody, they become engaged, and an engaged associate, an engaged friend, an engaged significant other, it's a completely different story. When somebody comes engaged, they're emotionally attached to what it is that you're trying to do, what you're trying to say, and they remember it. And so when you speak to the heart of anybody, when you speak to the heart of your pet dog, it changes how they work. It changes how they treat people. It changes how they treat customers.
Powerful. So what I want to do, and how I'm going to flip the script a little bit today, is I'm going to drill you with a bunch of questions, and I want you to take those 45-second snips, and I maybe dig deeper in a few of them. But I'm gonna have the JD live show here on the Press One for Nick podcast over the next 25-30 minutes.
It's all about, 45 seconds. JD coming to you live from
here it comes. Exactly. So the first one, let's start at the very beginning, right? Is you started as a trainee with Florida in the public supermarkets. And how did you get that job?
First of all, my mom was a cashier at Publix, and she said, "You got to go to work, Jimmy. We need your help." So the store manager came over and recruited me off of the basketball court. But it wasn't as a trainee. It was at a cleaner of the bathrooms and as what we called a bag boy. 45 seconds, that's over.
And what did you learn as a trainee?
I learned as a bag boy, not a trainee again, that one-on-one interaction with customers is key. I remember to this day my special customers back when I was 15 or 16 years old, and I still today, remember what I said earlier, it's all about starting one at a time. And that's where I learned that from. Leading people is not leading large groups, it's leading one at a time.
So there's a lot from taking it as a trainee all the way to having this guy named Sam Walton, for nobody who may or may not know who this guy is, but hired you to lead the development of the grocery business and superstore development at Walmart. What did he see in you that made you want, or made him hire you?
Sam Walton was the founder of Walmart, by the way. And so Sam found out about me through an action that I had taken back when I was running the division for Albertsons. And it was all about character. It was all about integrity. And we had just reversed the dismissal of a vendor, and I put them back in. Well, this vendor tells Sam, and Sam says, "Wow, that guy's got character." And by the way, within my 45 seconds, the definition of character is what you do when no one's looking. And so Sam said, "I got to meet this guy." And so we met, and the rest is history.
So what advice did you glean from him in the time that you had with Sam?
On a gurney in his office, we did not know this. He had 12 hours to live. He had a form of cancer. He was really chewing me out about a small bag expense. We just surpassed Sears at $40 billion a couple of weeks earlier. And he said, "Jim," he said, "you got to take care of this. When we get to be 500 billion, they do 750 billion today. That little tiny expense that you're saying isn't important gets important. I said, yes, sir, Mr. Sam, I got it. And I was walking out the door. He said, don't forget, most important thing I taught you. I said, I got it. I got it. Mr. Sam repeated it. It's the last thing he told me. He said, Jim, if you're ever bigger than the front line, you will fail and your business will fail. It's how we're built, Jim. Those were his last words.
It's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. So you've taken that and now are with those 45-second groups and continue to bring on the front line. You know, one thing that people always have called you here recently in a magazine, I believe, or maybe it was a city article, was the suitcase CEO or the fixer. And I think from my perspective, I think the change agent is a better way that people explain it. But why did people hire you to be the fixer?
I guess it starts with just reputation. And so, I always say when I talk to universities around the country, take the job nobody wants, take the job that's broken, take the job that you can fix and really make something of it. But Nick, you cannot take a company and turn it around without a team of people beside you. But more importantly, when I flip that triangle, you have 98% of any brick and mortar's employee population is on the front line. And so remember what Sam said, no one ever be bigger than the front line. Once they know that you're there with them, Jim come to you live from frying chicken. They'll do, and you talk to their heart, they turn it around. They're the closest to the customer. There's an old saying about disrupting companies. It's better to disrupt companies through the people on the front line than as a CEO. At Albertsons, there was 265,000 people on the front line. There's only one CEO. You think I did it? No, I didn't do it. They did it. And so that's how during times of companies that are underperforming, we were able to turn that around. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science at all. It's social science, the art of working with people.
So you've taken the Sam advice, the last 12 hours to live, to heart. And that is what you did the very time, every single time that you became the CEO of an organization, is you went to that front line. What was the message to that front line every single time?
I'm here for you. I mean, it's the front line is the most important component of any organization. Okay. You create this culture of caring. And when people know you care about them and you care for them, they're going to become engaged and they'll do things that you don't want to do. And then you show them that they can do things that they never thought they could do before. And it's game over. But listen, one of the things that I just did a talk called My Top 10 Leadership Lessons Ever. It's letting people know, which what 45 Live was, how important their jobs are. I don't care what they're doing. If it's the fella cleaning the restrooms, then it's all about, God, these are the cleanest restrooms I've ever seen in my life. And Nick, while I got you, it's also about, it's one of the top 10 things is celebrating successes, no matter how big or how small. Little successes are bigger because little successes are more in number. And before you know it, you might have 1 million small people celebrating the successes that they're doing.
That's so I love that. I love the small successes, and because it's all compounding interest back to the ultimate goal. One question that I have for you that I just thought of is, what question do you ask or have you asked in the interview process to make sure that they are the right culture fit?
You mean when I hire people? I don't ask the question when I'm presented with their CV. I look at all the things that they've done. I could care less about their business accomplishments. I look what they did their summer in high school. What was it that they kept busy? I look for stories that helped shape or got them involved in the turnaround situation of whatever I'm trying to hire. I'll never forget this one person. He was president of his fraternity. He was a honors student, and he sent me this application. He was looking for a marketing role, and I called him on it. I said, dude, did you ever work in high school, or did you ever have anything on the summer, or do you have any? He said, I'm not going to put that in there, Jim. My professor said, keep it within one page. I said, fine, I'm not hiring you. I don't know what you've done. I don't know what your character is. Show me something. So I don't ask the question so much, but I search for something that they've done that's extraordinary and that is in the art of storytelling. Don't forget, people retain stories. I still to this day can remember stories that people tell me on their CVs or their resumes about what they've done. I taught a kids camp. I taught horseback riding, or I was a lifeguard. That to me is what I look for in hiring people, even executives.
So in the previous question, you talked about the small things, and some of the small things end up being some of the bigger things. And one of the things that conversations that we've had here recently is that you've taken the time to write notes and letters to people throughout your career, and or flowers for that matter. Talk about what you've done and why that's important.
Well, first of all, writing notes is the future of communication. It's not this. It's not emoji. It's not a text. It's not TikTok. Handwritten notes are the future of communication. This might take a little more than 45 seconds because a handwritten note shows the receiver, number one, you took the time to send them a message. I did about 30,000 handwritten notes a year at Starbucks. At Albertsons, I probably did around about the same. Today, to this day, I'm not running a company, but I do 2 handwritten notes to anybody I might see, even if I don't know them. But think about this. A handwritten note, it stops time. It stops people in their tracks. They have to unwrap the envelope. Anticipation's building. They see what you say. And the best news is they can't delete a handwritten note. What do they do with it? They don't throw it away. They put it on their computer. They put it on their bathroom wall or whatever. And they always remember that. But they also know that you actually took the time to do this. It is the most powerful form of communication that I know of to this day, and always has been. And it's all about the story that's in that handwritten note. And storytelling predates writing. People were telling stories a long time ago. But the story might be, Sally, how's your cat? Jim. Sally says, whoa, I can't believe you remember the conversation. I said I'd take my cat to the vet. I urge everybody to try it. Get cheap stationery, just like an index card, if you will, and write a note to somebody and watch the difference.
I love that. Somebody else that was a guest on the podcast talked about what is your Ford, and it's memorizing and understanding what people's Ford is. What's their family, their occupation, their recreation, and their dreams. Know it, understand why it's important to them, and then communicate it back to them at the right time. And I think that's exactly what you're doing with those letters twice a week. How many letters do you think that you've done?
But in these top 10 things that 500,000 employees have taught me, what you just said, you just hit the number one learning for me. And that Ford example shows you care. And if I had to put it in Jim speak on my top 10 list, it's care more than others think possible, necessary, or expected. And in a business context, care more than your competition does for your employees and your customers. You'll never have a problem with sales if you do that. Getting people to do that, though, starts with the individual who's leading that group or that company.
Yeah. How many total letters do you think you've written in your lifetime?
I have
to employees.
I don't know. Look, I mean, it could be signing a birthday card, but that's a handwritten note with just your signature on it. So I wouldn't even begin to figure that out. I got no idea. More than 10.
So what you've done, you've moved 13 times in 20 years. You've been with a bunch of corporations because you're the suitcase CEO of what people call you. What are
they actually call me the vagabond boss. So,
so what would you go if you can go back to one of those and change what you've done? What would you do different?
I wouldn't do a thing. I wouldn't do a thing differently, because what embedded in what you just said, let's see if I can do this in 45 seconds, is the fact that every time you go into a new company or to a new organization, you're a freshman again in that company. I had a store manager for Nordstrom write me a note. She said, JD, I'm going to a store all the way from Connecticut to Portland. What single bit of advice can you give me? I said, be a freshman again, because all of you recall your freshman days of anything. You're nervous, you're scared, you respected people, you listened more than you spoke, you asked a lot of questions. If leaders just did that and surrounded themselves with people smarter than them, they would show everyone how much they cared for them. But I wouldn't do a thing different, because every time I'd go into a new organization, forget about it. They didn't care what I knew. They wanted to know how much I cared. I'll never forget this story. We opened up a super center, my first super center as a team in Paducah, Kentucky. I walk into the store the day before it opened. The cashier comes up to me. Her name was Jim. I have big Jim on here, big letters, because I couldn't see that well. So I want to make sure I changed everybody's to big font so I could read their names. She goes, "So you're Jim Donald?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "We read about you. You're putting us in the food business." And I kept trying to explain to her, but she kept cutting me off. She goes, "Jim, you want to meet my cashiers? I got 50 of them in training." Sure. And as we walked over, she says, "Jim, let me tell you something. Our cashiers, me, we don't really care how much you know, but what we want to know is how much you care." And she said the same thing that Sam told me before he passed. He said, "It's how we're built, Jim." Never forget that. That was in 1992. And that began my whole jotting down of what people taught me.
So you didn't do that prior?
I didn't know about it. Intuitively, I probably did. But when she calls you out, it's pretty humbling.
Yeah, it's powerful. So you've been working for 50 plus years, had what, 500,000 employees plus or minus.
Yep.
If you can go back and talk to the 25-year-old Jim, what advice would you say?
Keep trying, because I was doing that, to make the individuals around you better. Make sure you give them the opportunity, and make sure you listen to what they have to say.
From your perspective, what's the difference between grit and resilience?
I don't think that there is. You can also throw, what's the difference between grit, resilience, and being a grinder? I think it's all the same, and I'm a grinder. And so again, it's the small things that you celebrate that grow to be big things. It's taking one day at a time. It's not trying to boil the ocean, as somebody once told me just the other day. It's about the little tiny pots of water that are boiling up, and do what you want to do. But grit is just the same as resilient or being a grinder. It's just never giving up.
So you talked about the importance of storytelling, and I couldn't agree more. And one of the conversations we had is about telling good stories or good fish stories. So what's the best fish story you got?
Well, first of all, if you recall, when I first met you, you told me about your steeplechase adventures. And as you know, early this morning, I told you I went on a steeplechase run. Why? Because I recalled all that. But a fish story is just a story. It's like the old fisherman that holds up a fish. "I caught a fish this big." Well, maybe it was that big. It's kind of a fictitious fish story, but I took off on that. And in my early days at Walmart, when I was trying to get Walmart interested in food and getting all these general merchandise people, I actually took a fish. And I took this fish and I held it up. And from that came the fish story. And so to this day, when I speak live, and even when I don't speak live, I still hold a fish up and I tell the story. And it's a true story. I won't go into it, but people retain the stories. And it was like, when I use this fish story about the turnaround of Pathmark in 1997 of spring, it was just 2 years ago, which would have been 23 years later, a guy called me to do his keynote. And I said, "What do you want me to talk about, Bill?" He was a CEO. He said, "I don't care what you talk about, but whatever you do, bring the fish." And so he was there on the original fish story, and they just remember it. So it's the art of leadership, because one of the things too in my top 10 is that people want to understand what you're trying to do. If you're asking 275,000 employees to all move in the same direction, you just can't tell them to move in the same direction. You got to apply a story to that so they get it. And people, 99.9% of people want to understand what they're trying to do, and they want to do well.
So what else is in your top 10 that we haven't covered today?
Well, you got street cred. I mean, everybody has to look at themselves in the mirror and say, hey, Nick, how's your street cred? And that came from a talk I gave in a prison, where I went around and met all the inmates that I was talking to. And one inmate said in the back, goes, "Hey, JD, where did you get your street cred? We've never had anybody come in and want to know what the hell our names were." And if you look up street cred, it's like having knowledge or expertise in one certain field, whatever that field is. If you don't have street cred, you just won't be a leader. The next one is, for all of your associates that you're working with, are they a head count, or do their heads count? People want to be able to make decisions on the fly. Let's see what else. So I told you about celebrating the small things. There's so many of them. A curiosity, go where you've never been before. You'll find things that you never even imagined you would do. When I took a company over, the first thing I did in the first 6 months was hit the road, unannounced, to go into back rooms, warehouses, and just see what's out there and what people are saying. And so, it's all good stuff. Just really quick, let me just pull this up. Some of the other things are, I talked about, they acknowledge, they appreciate associates all over the world, appreciate follow-ups and remember them. That's the handwritten letter, the feature of communication. Yeah, I mean, that's that. I probably hit all 10 of them. Acknowledge the fact that your associates are indeed your teachers. I got a challenge for everybody that listens to this. Ask people you work with what they taught you, and you'll be surprised what they tell you. But if we acknowledge the fact that our associates, no matter what level, are indeed the teachers, get inside their shoes, walk a mile with them and see what they're doing. Maybe you can help them, but more importantly, I guarantee you they'll be able to help you become a better leader.
I love that. And it's being that constant learner and the constant listener so that you can learn.
Yep.
There's a lot to that. What legacy do you want to leave?
Look, I'd like to leave a legacy that you can't be successful unless you take your family with you wherever you go. I don't mean moving them, but I mean making sure that you spend time with those you surround yourself with. And at the end of the day, the business should be the second priority, because you can't spend time in the business if you don't spend time with those you surround yourself with.
The last question I have before my final two is you had the opportunity. So you have a total of 3 questions. I tricked you. So you were the president and CEO at Starbucks, where you led the company through record growth, through 5 straight years of 20% growth. What was the success of those 5 years and that you would provide to other people?
Well, I mean, if you're saying what were the leadership traits that I left them with, it's no different. I mean, I started at Starbucks in October of 2002, and I gave my first keynote at a store managers meeting in front of probably at the time 4,000 people. And I just gotten off the road. Okay, I just gotten off the road. I'll never forget this. And we had all countries in there. There's probably 15 countries, And what I opened up was with the Billy and the Sally story. And Billy's holding the starfish up and he's showing it to Sally. But the story is that there was 10,000 more starfish washed up on the beach at low tide, and Billy's throwing them in the water. And Sally said, because she's older, Sally's 13, Billy's 10. Billy, what are you doing? and I'm talking to 4,000 people. He said, I'm throwing these starfish back into the water. So I said, Billy, there's 10,000 starfish out here. You can't make a difference. And he holds that starfish up to Sally and says, to this one I can, and throws it back. So again, we led with this. Leadership is one at a time. And so don't think you have to move masses. You only have to move one at a time.
That's great advice. So the last 2 questions I have for you is, what book or person has influenced you the most in the last year?
I will tell you that my favorite personal business book is from a professor at Wharton by the name of Adam Grant. The book is Give and Take. Adam's written 5 books now, and they're all New York Times bestsellers. This book, though, tells stories about those that are successful in life are the givers of the world, not the takers. And the stories just go on and on and on. And I think I've probably purchased over 1,000 to give away to some businesses or associates or things like this. It's had a big impact on my life.
I will definitely check it out. The last question I have here for you, if you could leave a note for anybody in customer service and customer experience, it's going to hit everybody's desk Monday at 8 a.m. What would it say? Care more than others think possible, necessary, or expected. And please care more than your competition does. Great advice, Jim. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate all the stories and all the knowledge that you're providing, and looking forward to my listener to share. Feel free to connect with Jim online and follow his journey. Jim, thanks so much.
Take care. Thanks.